We're going to quickly recap all LR question types and their strategies, and you might adjust some of your strategies or just give it a try to my strategy and see if it works better for you. Okay. Now, LR section, I divide in two main categories. There are questions in which you must identify a conclusion because they are argument-based questions, which is majority of the question types in LR. And then there are three question types in which you don't have to identify a conclusion. They are information-based question types. It must be true, most strongly supported, and must be false. These three question types, don't look for the conclusion. Why? Because it's a bunch of facts and you have to do a different thing to find the right answer choice. Okay, so here we go. The first one, must be true. What do you do in it? It must be true question. The right answer choice must be 100% true based on the information in the stimulus. So there will be some answer choices which will have some support from the stimulus, but they are not necessarily must be true. There will be only one which is proven 100% true by the stimulus. It will be guaranteed. It will be proven true. There will be information. There will be a sentence, a line, or a word which will prove it 100% true. Okay, so look for that one. Must be false. Opposite of must be true. In this question type, look for the answer choice that is proven false by the stimulus. There will be 3-4 answer choices, which the wrong ones, which could be false. Sometimes they're false, sometimes they're not. They're wrong answer choices. The right one must be false, which then you can expect it to be against one of the things mentioned in the stimulus because that's the only way for it to be must be false. Next one, most strongly supported. How do you do this one? This is just like must be true. Read the stimulus, go to the answer choices, and find the one which is somewhat proven true by the stimulus. But just one big difference between this and must be true. And the difference is that the answer choice in most strongly supported does not have to be proven 100% true by the stimulus. It doesn't need to be. There will be only one answer choice, the right answer choice, which has some support by the stimulus. The 4 wrong answer choices have no support at all. They don't have any support. Like, it must be true, the 4 wrong answer choices, some of the answer choices might have some support from the stimulus, but in this one, the 4 wrong ones have no support, 0 support, but one has somewhat support from the stimulus, okay? And don't expect in this one the right answer choice to be fully proven true, okay? So it's a lot like must be true, but with a key difference. Now we are going in argument-based questions. So conclusion is the most important part of all argument-based questions. Even in your argument, right? So argument is 2 parts, the evidence, then the conclusion. And you're giving all of this evidence to support what the conclusion, right? So you have to identify conclusion in all of the question types because it is the most important part, right? That whole evidence, the premise, everything given is to support the conclusion. So how do you do the strength of question? Find the conclusion and look for answer choice that supports the conclusion. That increases the chance that the conclusion is true. The 4 wrong answer choices will not support it at all. Now, some of them might weaken it, but don't expect all 4 wrong answer choices to weaken it. So if it doesn't strengthen, it doesn't have to weaken. It could be just irrelevant, okay? But the right answer choice will strengthen it. Now, some students expect answer choice to make it super strong, right? It doesn't need to. The right answer choice will do a little bit strengthening or support to the conclusion, and that's about it. And be comfortable with answer choice that has new information. As long as it strengthens, it's the right answer choice. They can have new information. Okay? Weaken. What do we do here? Opposite of strengthen. Find the conclusion in the argument and find the answer choice that weakens it, that does some damage, right? And it can have new information, just like strengthen question. Flaw. Find the flaw in the argument. Where is the flaw? If you keep staring at the whole stimulus looking for the flaw, you won't find it or it will take very long. What to do? Find the conclusion and ask yourself, why is this conclusion not justified based on the premises given? Typically, there's nothing wrong with the premises. They are good, they're fine, they're facts. Then there's nothing wrong with the conclusion as well. It's just they're not compatible, right? The premises are not good enough to justify this conclusion, okay? So in the flaw question, grab the conclusion and ask yourself, why are these premises not justifying it? And answer to that question is flaw. Okay? This is very common. And honestly, this is one of the easiest question types because you can precisely predict the answer choice. Sufficient assumption. What is this one? So sufficient and necessary assumption confused a lot. But this one, honestly, you can just take it as a strengthened question. What does that mean? In this one, find the conclusion and then find the answer choice which makes the conclusion super strong. It guarantees it. And I tell the students that you can think of this question as you are helping author is your friend, you're helping author or your friend make the argument super strong. But here's the thing, and you know how in strengthened question we can have new information? Not in this one. So you can't just like come up with something which sounds very irrelevant in this question type, but in strengthened question you can, right? Now also one difference between this and strengthen. In strengthen, the right answer choice doesn't have to make the conclusion super strong. No, it does a little bit strengthening, it does the job, but not in this one. In this one, you might have had 2-3 answer choices which strengthen the conclusion, but there's only one that guarantees it, so you choose the one that guarantees it, okay? Necessary assumption. What is this one? Well, here, you're not trying to strengthen anything, you're finding the conclusion and think, what did author assume for this to be valid? Just think that. Here, you're not trying to strengthen. This is very different from sufficient assumption. Here, you're not trying to help anyone. It's the assumption that author has already made. Go to the answer choices, pick the one that author has assumed. The 4 wrong ones, author has not assumed them. Haven't assumed them. Flaw, we already covered it. It's a typo. Parallel reasoning. What is this? We are trying to match the structure of the argument. You're trying to match the structure of the answer choice with the stimulus. How do you do that? Well, the big thing is, okay, like if I'm trying to match the structure, like what does that really mean? You don't have to match the subject matter. The topic of the stimulus could be very different from the answer choice. That's okay. You don't have to match the order of the premises and conclusion also. So if the stimulus had conclusion in first sentence, the conclusion in the right answer choice could be in the last sentence. That's okay. What you're trying to match is strength of the language in the conclusion. So if stimulus conclusion was strong, then the conclusion of the right answer choice should also be strong. That needs to match. That's one thing. Second, you're matching the number of premises. If the number of premises in the stimulus were 3, then you should have 3 premises in the right answer choice. These are 2 things you're matching. The other thing is really the direction of the argument, right? If the stimulus has like A wouldn't work, B doesn't work, C doesn't work, therefore we should go with D. It's more like, getting rid of alternatives. Like 4 options, 3 don't work, we go with the 4th one. The right answer choice should do exactly the same. It really is like how it gets to the conclusion, and the right answer choice should match the same, the route. Parallel flaw. This question type and the previous one, they have nothing in common except the word parallel. In parallel flaw question, you don't have to match the subject structure. You just don't have to match anything except the flaw. Okay? So find the flaw in the stimulus just the way you do in flaw question. Find the conclusion, premises, ask why does this not justify it, find the flaw. Once you've found it, go to the answer choices, do the same thing, find flaws in them, and then see which answer choice comes exactly the same flaw. No difference at all. You wouldn't have to deal with, oh, this answer is right because it has the flaw which is similar to the one in the stimulus. No, it has to be exactly the same flaw. Okay? As simple as that. Find flaw in the stimulus, answer choices, pick the answer choice, that comes the same flaw. Main point. By now, you should be really good at identifying conclusion. So main point of the argument is its conclusion. So you don't have to summarize the entire argument. No, don't do that. Some prep companies teach it. It's just a waste of time. Find the conclusion of the argument and then go to the answer choices and pick one that says exactly the same thing or a bit of variation of the conclusion. Okay? You wouldn't have to find an answer choice which is mix of premises and the conclusion. No, it's just really the one that is closest to the conclusion. Okay? Method of reasoning. In this question type, the right answer choice will describe the structure of the argument. In parallel reasoning, we were trying to match it. Remember that? We were trying to match it. In this one, you're describing the structure. Okay? You know how in flaw question, we are trying to find the flaw in the argument. We're describing the flaw. And then in parallel flaw, we are trying to match the flaw. This is just like that. In method of reasoning, you're trying to describe the structure. And in parallel reasoning, you're trying to match the structure. Do you get what I'm saying? So flaw questions relation with parallel flaw is just the way method of reasoning questions relation is with parallel reasoning. I hope you get it. Okay. Role question. Here you're trying to find the role of a sentence or a line or a word in the argument. And it really is first end up wasting time when they're trying to see how it fits in the entire argument. Here's an easy way. Find the conclusion of the argument, right? Read the argument. Don't worry about the line they're talking about. Is the moment that you've identify the question type as a role question, run to the stimulus, find the conclusion. Once you've found the conclusion, then go back to the question and find and identify the line they're talking about. Okay, so now you have two things. You have the conclusion of the argument, and then you have this line they're talking about, and see how this line that they're talking about, which they want to identify the role in the argument, see how that's related to the conclusion of the argument. Many times it's the conclusion itself. So once you identify the conclusion and then identify the line they're talking about, it is exactly the same. Then the role of that line in the argument is that's the conclusion of the argument. Sometimes it's not. It's separate from the conclusion. Then we'll think, does it support the argument? Well, okay, then it's a premise that supports the argument. Well, sometimes it doesn't support, then it is something that is against the conclusion. Basically, what I'm trying to say, rather than trying to understand the role of a sentence in the entire argument, if you can just see how it's related to the conclusion, that's its role. Okay, that's why it exists. It exists there in relation to the conclusion. Resolve question. What do we do in this one? As the name suggests, we're trying to solve something. What are we trying to solve? There is a problem in the argument. There's a contradiction. Okay, it's pretty obvious. All right, so it's must that you should identify it. For example, normally it snows in Canada every year. Why this year didn't snow? Right? How do we solve that issue? Like, it's confusing. The winter's gone by and there's no snow in Canada. And the right answer choice will resolve the issue. It will say something which will make sense and solve the issue, right? So there will be a contradiction or problem in the argument, and the right answer choice will solve it. So it's crucial that you identify the problem before you try to find the answer choice that's solving it. Explain question. A lot similar to resolve question, but which is a very subtle difference. We have problem in the argument in this question type too. But here we're not trying to resolve it, we're trying to explain why it's happening. And a lot of times when you're trying to explain something why it's happening, in a way you're solving it, you will see, it will sound a lot like a resolve question, but I really do separate them from the resolve question. Why? Because you're not trying to solve it, you're trying to explain it, which might sound like you're resolving it, but you're not. I hope it makes sense. In short, in this one, find the problem just like you find the problem in this stimulus and resolve question, and then go find the answer choice that explains why that problem is occurring. Not like, okay, how do we solve it? Okay. Agree. What is it? They will give you two arguments and then ask you, how do these two people agree? It's pretty easy to find that, right? When you read two arguments, you kind of sense how they agree. But the most common wrong answer choice in this one is when one of the person has opinion on the subject, the other one does not, and then students are like, well, they agree on it. No, if the other one did not give an opinion on that matter, then we cannot say they both agree on it. So just be careful with those answer choices where one of the people don't have opinion on it. Otherwise, it's pretty easy. Disagree, just like agree, two arguments, find what they disagree on. And they don't honestly have to disagree in their conclusions. Sometimes they disagree on the premises, but have similar conclusions. Okay, so find the answer choice where both people have opinion on the subject and they have differing opinion. Evaluate. What does evaluate mean? It means to analyze, to evaluate, to see the quality of a thing. And in these question types, the right answer choice will evaluate the quality of the argument. What does that mean? Well, there will be good argument, and then the answer choices, all of them, will be actually 5 questions. There will be actually 5 questions. And you have to pick answer choice, which is actually a question, that when you answer, that answer should help you identify or evaluate the strength of the argument of stimulus. Pretty long, right? That's why I have to go fast. I wish I could do a question, but in the future I will. Principle. If you're good at strength in question, you'll be fine in this one. They give you some kind of generalization and that you have to apply. Sometimes you have to apply on the stimulus, sometimes you have to apply on the answer choice. But there are 3 subcategories of principle question, and you're just trying to sometimes strengthen stimulus, sometimes strengthen answer choice, but they're pretty easy. When you look at them, they're a lot like a strengthen question. Okay, so that was a quick recap of the entire LR section. I went really fast through it. People study it for months, they practice it for a long time, and I'm trying to cover it in less than 10 minutes, right? We went through it pretty fast, and that's why I said this is a video for those who have already covered everything. I hope it helps.